Just as a note, this course is not for complete beginners. We will build on the knowledge from part 1 of this course. We will focus on animation within After Effects. Please download the assets from Skillshare. The Illustrator file is included in those assets, and you can use that for the animation. As mentioned before, naming is crucial for animation, especially when you have a lot of layers. Like in this case, we have a character that has legs and feet and a head and a body and so on. You want to start your group of layers with one word, like in this case, ant, and then you want to add what part of the ant it is, like the body, the leg, the foot, etc. We're going to be animating a triple split screen, and I like exact comp sizes. For a triple split screen, one scene is half of the full width of our scene, of our composition, which would be 960 pixels. Even though each scene is only a third of the size of a screen, we are going to have the Illustrator artboard and After Effects comp set to a slightly wider size, which is why we're going with the 960 pixels. This way, we have a little bit of a buffer zone. If we want to animate something in from off-screen, we don't have to work blindly. And we can slide panels to the side if we want to create a transition, and it doesn't create gaps between the scenes. We don't have to worry about those. Right, now we're going to jump into After Effects, and this is the scene that we will be animating today. You can download all of the files from Skillshare, and this will also include the final animation file if you want to check back, see what I did, what you did differently, and compare notes. We have already discussed importing assets into Illustrator in part 1 of the course, so I'll skip this part. We'll start immediately with setting up our comp. So I've already prepared all of the subcomps, all of the pre-comps over here, and they're sitting within my main comp over here. It's quite important to have a clean folder structure, as mentioned before. We have 3 scenes over here, and I've numbered them in the VFX naming standard. So 010, 020, 030. I've given them 3 different colors, so they stand out within our main comp, drag them into our main comp. I'll just demonstrate here. We want to have one main comp with all of our scenes inside. We're going to set the start time code to 59 minutes, and the duration of the animation will be 11 minutes. I'll remind you later of why we are doing it this way. Then we would have this comp. We want to drag our 3 comps in here. I've already set a start and an end marker. We have them over here. We'll set the beginning of our animation, set a start marker, and set an end marker at 1 minute of the animation. So this is what it would look like. We would then also want to cut the beginning of our comp and set a start marker at the beginning of each comp. The reason why we're doing this is in case we had cut all of these comps over here and we were moving around very quickly and didn't notice that we moved our animation over here, we now have a visual aid that this animation has moved. This comp is no longer in the correct place, so we can move this back and we know that it's all correct. You would now move all 3 comps to their correct positions to create the triple screen look. Right, let's jump into our prepared main comp. Like mentioned, we will be setting the end of the animation at 1 minute. Just to remind you, we have the start time code of all comps set to 59 minutes with a duration of 11 minutes. That means we have 1 minute of leeway in case we want to add some animation or a pause before the point we have set as our starting point for our animation. It's kind of like a failsafe. Our point 0 will show as 1 hour in the timeline. Ideally, you want to start all of your animations at a point 0, or in our case, a theoretical point 0, in case you or someone else watches your animation back. They can then tell you that, for example, at 1 minute 11 seconds, there is a mistake. You can jump into your After Effects file and skip exactly to that time without having to scrub through your animation. So it's kind of like helping you with feedback. We have markers at the start and at the end of our scene, so we know where to set our workspace for rendering. Inside our comp, we have all of our layers trimmed to the beginning of the scene and set start and end markers, just like in the main comp. I have already done the color coding of all of the layers, and since we've covered this in part 1 of this course, we'll be skipping it for this part. You want to make sure that the background is in the correct position. If you have some pixels that are off, you can right-click and you can hit reset. Then you want to click this little button to continuously rasterize your layer to avoid a transparent pixel frame around the edge of your layer. This can sometimes happen, and if you have overlapping scenes, they could shine through. You want to avoid that. Now for a character, it's quite important to have a very distinct parenting dependency. So for instance, we have feelers over here, front and back, and we want them to be parented to the head. Same with the jaw, we want that one parented to the head. The head needs to be parented to the body so that if we move the body, the head comes along. If we move the head in some way, the feelers and everything that belongs to the head will come along. Now we've got thighs over here. These thighs need to be parented to the body. And then the second part of the leg is the leg. That needs to be parented to each corresponding thigh. You see I've named all of the legs, leg front 01 to 03. So we've got back legs and we've got front legs, and there's quite a lot of parts. So again, I'd like to point out that naming is crucial. Otherwise, you're just gonna lose your mind. Right, now that we've parented all of our legs to the thighs, we're gonna go to the foot, and we want the foot to be parented to the leg. And now we want to give the body a controller. We'll hit Control or Command Alt Shift Y. We'll position the controller where our body is, and we'll parent the body to the controller. We always want to have one main controller for characters. This acts as just a controller for the body so that everything comes along. We must have missed one of the legs. Additionally to controlling the character, it also acts as a visual aid and a divider between all of your layers, because you have so many layers here. If you had multiple characters, you have a controller for each character, and then you can see where all of the layers for one character end. We'll crop this layer and we'll give it a name. We'll call it Control Ant. And let's check the leg, which wasn't parented to the thigh, and the foot, which we had parented. Let's check if everything is parented correctly. Yes. And we also want the shadow to come along. The shadow cannot be parented to the body. If you want to move the body, the shadow would move. So we want to parent the shadow to the controller as well. Now everything else can stay the way it is. If you like, you can also parent the leaves to the corresponding plant. Now we'll jump into the next scene. We have some jellyfish over here. So we want all of the jellyfish legs to be parented to the corresponding jellyfish. And we want each jellyfish to have a controller. So we'll hit Command Control Alt Shift Y. We'll crop that layer, move it to the position of the jellyfish, and rename that controller. And we'll do the same for all of the other jellyfish. We will then parent all of our main bodies of the jellyfish to our controllers. We'll also check our background and make sure this little star is ticked. Right, let's jump into our last scene, and we want to do exactly the same thing. We want the fins and the jaw of each fish to be parented to the corresponding body of the fish. You can also click on the little colored box over here and select Label Group. This is another reason why we're coloring all of our layers in After Effects, because everything that belongs together can then be selected by clicking Select Label Group. It will then select all of the layers that are colored with this color. And then we can drag all of this to the fish body, and all of them are parented at the same time. It's a great trick. Now we'll also add some controllers to all of these fish. I parented my fish to the controller immediately, and that was a mistake, because if I was to move this now, the fish would come with, obviously. So you want to move your controller before you parent your fish to the controller. So let's undo that. We'll move our controller to the body position. Then we'll parent the controller, crop it, and give it a name. And we'll do the same for all of the other fish. I use capital B and capital F to distinguish between foreground and background objects. That way the names are shorter and you don't have background something written out, because the longer your names are, the more space you need over here to display them. So you want to keep your naming very, very short. Now that we've done that, we want to position the anchors in the correct position for all of our characters. Let's begin with our first scene and the ant. We want the feelers to rotate from the base of the feeler over here. So we want to hit Y and reposition the anchor point of all of these objects. We also want to do that for the jaw, front and back jaw, and for the feet, thighs, and legs as well. It helps if you solo your layers and then you can see just that one layer without having to turn everything on and off all the time. You can also do that for multiple layers at the same time if you just want to look at one entire leg with all of its parts. That way you can see where the rotation needs to sit in correlation to the next part. You want to be moving the anchor points to where the foot or where the part of the body is going to be rotating. Now we've set all of that up. We want to move over to the jellyfish and we want to position the anchor points of these legs where they will be rotating from. So at the top over here. Now that we've done that, we'll skip to the last scene and again, do the same. You can zoom into your scene by using the scroll wheel on your mouse. You can also use Shift to move your anchor point horizontally or vertically in a linear fashion. If you hold Command or Control, it can also snap to a point. So I've missed that we have a head separated from the body for this fish. We want to parent the jaw to the head and the head to the fish body. So since we can't see the fins over here, we can move the fish into the scene for now. We'll adjust the anchor points like this. And then we'll just move the fish back. Now that we've done that, we can start animating.